Well, I just got back from my shooting area, and today didn't happen to be a real good day for brass, but it was a good day for bullets. So I picked up a bunch of bullets that were shot up out there at the range, and what my plan is to melt all this off and reuse it. Okay, so I just put the lead on the scale, and right now it looks like we have 25 pounds of lead. Now that's not going to be the final weight of the working lead, because there's a lot of these in here that have copper jackets that are going to be removed during the melting process, and there's some dirt and other things, debris and stuff in here, and but I will show you the process that I use to get rid of all this junk and dirt and copper jackets and everything. And at the end of the video I will show you the final weight of the actual lead that's usable. So 25 pounds to start, and I'll see you next step. We'll be cleaning this lead. So right now what I'm doing is I'm filling the bowl up with the lead in it, full of water. And I'm going to give it a little squirt of dish soap. Turn that off, and I'll let them sit for about half an hour, and then I'll come back and I'll clean them up. Now you want to be careful putting your fingers in there, because there's all those sharp jackets and you don't want to cut your fingers, you know. So when you go through here, be real careful about it, and don't dig too hard with your hands. You don't want to get any of those jackets cutting yourself, so be careful. This isn't like cleaning brass, okay? This is a lot different. So I'll let those sit a little bit, and I'll let that water kind of work in there, and we'll see you in a couple minutes. Okay, right now I'm in the middle of the cleaning process, and basically what I'm doing is I'm getting these these lead a handful at a time, and I'm looking at them, checking to make sure that the lead's exposed. And if the lead's exposed on all of them, then we're good. If you get a full metal jacket like this, look at the bottom and make sure that the bottom is open. In other words, we need it to be available for the lead to flow out. If it's good, then you're fine. Anything that was a cast bullet is good, and you're just checking the jackets. If the jackets are broken, good, because that means the lead's going to come out. If you have a jacketed bullet that's not broken, check again, make sure that it's open on the bottom, that the lead can flow out. And you basically throw them in another bucket. Occasionally you'll find something like this. Okay, now this is an empty jacket. It has no lead in it at all. What I do is I throw that in the trap. So let's say you're digging through, and I find this, it's good, looking good, everything's fine. You're digging through, I'm trying to find one that I can show you as an example. Let's say this one. Okay, that hand is full, that's good, everything looks fine. Jackets are broken, things look good. Okay, everything's good. Let's say these two. They have the jacket's not really broken too bad, and the bottoms are sealed shut. So that's what I take these little diagonal cutters for. Just basically cut them in half. What that does is that opens it so that the lead can come out when it melts. This will save you a lot of time when you start going in there to make your ingots when you're boiling it down. So I'm going to go through all this lead, and I'm going to end up with a bucket full of lead that's been checked, and it's also anything that was full metal jacket has been cut so that the lead can flow out. If you forget that step, that cutting step, you will have bullets that don't go through, and they'll just be sitting in there floating around, and they'll be the lead won't come out of them. So anything that's full metal jacket all the way, you want to make sure that you cut them. So like I said, I'm going to go through this bucket, we'll talk to you in a few minutes when I'm done with that. Just wanted to show you, you can cut them something like this too if you want. That's perfectly fine. They'll look just fine, because it don't matter. It's just all we're trying to do is break that copper plating so we can get the lead out when it melts. If you come across anything like this that has a minor hole in it and you're not sure of how bad it is, and it's a full metal jacket, just cut it anyway. Okay, don't waste your time. Something like this, it might have like a little hole inside or something. Just to make sure, you know, just go ahead and cut it. Don't worry right now at this point in the game as far as picking out any copper unless it's obvious. Some copper might still have a little bit of lead in it. See, that's what I wasn't sure about that one, so I just cut it. But what I was saying about the copper, the jackets, don't worry too much about this because they will float to the top when we're in there doing our smelting, when we're heating it up. So don't waste too much time right now digging out copper. It'll float later. Okay, I'm done cleaning it, or excuse me, I'm done inspecting it. Now it's time to clean it. The easiest way that I found to clean it is to get two buckets, one with all the lead in it and one with just a little water. I like to take all the lead, pour it in the water, clean this bowl a little bit, and put some water in there, and then eventually we're just going to start taking them out by handfuls. And be careful because these jackets, these copper jackets, will cut you. Basically, we're pouring them back in. You can do them by hand like this, or you can pick it up, pour a little bit of the water out. Once you get the majority of the water out, you can start pouring it out. All we're trying to do is we're trying to agitate them a little bit. Okay, once you get that done, then we're ready to go. But I got to get the rest of this water out. So let's do this. And that's really all I do for cleaning right now. I don't want to get my hands in there too much as far as reaching in and grabbing them and stuff, because they will cut you. Those copper jackets are no joke. I can't tell you the amount of times that I've cut my fingers reaching in there trying to get a handful and end up cutting my hands. So if you have like maybe a spatula or a big metal spoon or anything, tin can, I mean, you can get that can, kind of come in, help them. What you want is you want the lead is, I don't want to use the word as dry as possible, but you want the water. So I'm just going to use this can to save my fingers, and this will kind of cut down on the weight. And once I get it a little bit lighter, then I can kind of lift it up and get some of the water out again. From there, I got enough water out. Just going to try to, and there we have it. They've been cleaned for the most part, and they're ready to take in and start cooking them. Okay, now I have a few things in front of me. I have my safety glasses again. You notice I'm wearing good clothes, good pants. I have some shoes on. I have a good pair of gloves. Now these gloves are not to be they're not to be for handling too hot of things. So I have my pan here. I've got my flame. I have a little bowl, and this is where I'm going to put all my dross or my impurities. So I'm going to go ahead and take some of this lead, and they're wet right now, so I got to be careful. If I had any lead in there already that was molten, it would be bad news to do that. But because I didn't have any molten lead in there, it's okay to put it in there wet like this. After this batch finishes though, I'll have to let this cool down to work on the rest of these because they're still wet. Because what could happen is if I take wet lead and I put it in there, the result would be that the water might boil too quickly and release steam, and therefore when you have the steam, it could create a small explosion and you could have lead flying everywhere. There's another option, however, and that is take the lead, let it sit in there for a few minutes on the heat and dry, and then move it over to another container and then put some more wet in, and then at least you have semi-wet, the word I'm looking for is semi-dry lead. So that's another option. I think I'll do that. Okay, I have a nice little metal container here. This lead has had a few minutes to dry. I'm going to go ahead and get my little bit thicker gloves just to handle this. Use it like a hot mitt. And I'm just going to pour this in here for now. I'm going to get some more lead that's wet. And put it in here. This will just help dry it so I don't have to worry about anything being explosive on me. So again, some of these are a little bit wet, but that's okay. They'll be okay because they're still hot and they'll have a little time to dry. I want to mention, before you get too excited into doing this lead stuff, you can hear behind me I have a nice fan blowing, and I have the garage door open and I have the fan blowing the air outward. It's very important that when you're dealing with lead that you have good ventilation. You don't want to get smelling these fumes too much. They could cause you big problems. So make sure you got good cross ventilation, you got some sort of fan blowing them fumes away from you. Okay, this second batch is pretty well dry. I don't hear too much sizzling anymore. There's a little water in them, but it'll dry the rest of the way sitting in there. So with this last batch, I'm going to go ahead and let that start to melt. So I'll wait, maybe 15-20 minutes, and it should be coming down to a good liquid form. I'll move this out of the way. I have a little cup here. This cup I'm going to be using to scoop more lead, and then I'm going to put it in there in small batches. I also have this little cup. That's going to be to get the impurities out of. I have this little bit bigger bowl. That'll be where all the jackets and stuff go. So I'm just adding a little bit of lead to try to get this thing to start to boil. Not boil, but come to a liquid state. So again, I'll wait about 15 minutes. Right now I'm digging down inside the bottom of the pan, and I'm starting to see just a little bit of liquid. The more liquid that we get, the quicker the melting process will be, because that lead will go into the hot liquid and it'll start taking off pretty quickly. But you dig down, because some of this I'm starting to get a little bit. What I was going to say was, I don't know if you can hear me with that fan behind me, but some of this lead melts a little sooner than the rest of it. The good thing about that is we're going to mix it all together, and it'll all have pretty much the same melting rate after this. Right now I have a little piece of lead in my hand here. It's pretty well straight. And watch what happens when I put it down in the molten lead. It doesn't melt fast, but it does melt. What I like to do is I like to keep moving my spoon in and out of it and keep moving it around, and that'll heat the whole batch up. You'll notice that we're starting to turn into liquid. The more liquid that you see, the quicker you're gonna get there. I'm gonna go ahead and introduce my strainer to the mix now, because you can start to see that some of these jackets are empty. And that means the lead is melted inside and they're gonna start pouring. Another reason I'm introducing this strainer to the pot now is because I want it to start to get hot. That way the lead will stop sticking to it. You'll be able to tell how much of the material you pick up is empty and how much still has lead in it, simply by the weight of it. So we're not quite ready yet, because it still feels a little bit heavy when I pick up a bunch of it. But we're getting close. So I'll come back in about 5 more minutes. Okay, now we have a lot of the jacket separating, and I think we're ready to start straining it out. By the way, I bought this little strainer at Walmart. It was like $4. Perfect for what I'm doing. It does a quick job. It's very thorough. If you get a strainer full and it feels a little heavy, just put it back down in the liquid and let it heat up a little more. Sometimes this will release whatever lead's in there. I shake it so that it'll dump the lead out of the jackets. If you had not done a good job of checking the full metal jacket bullets earlier when we were cleaning them, you would have some that were still full of lead where the lead couldn't get out. But because we did a good job earlier, that's what's making the lead stay in the pan instead of the jackets. You can see in our mix that we have a lot of dirt and stuff in there. lot of impurities. This is what they refer to as dross. Don't worry about that just yet. We'll deal with that later. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pour another batch in. And remember, if there's any kind of water in here, you need to be careful. So make sure that you've dried these out pretty good. Okay, they're looking pretty good. When you pour them in, don't just pour them in where they'll splash. Make sure that you pour them in nice and easy because you don't want this lead splashing on you. See, we got a little pop there. So we must have had a little bit of moisture. Notice it turned into a solid piece because the material that we put in was cooler than the material in the pan. So this would be a good time for me to put another scoop in while it's cool. Notice how I'm holding my little pot and my strainer, holding it kind of like this, because if it pops, that's my little bit of protection. Keep that stuff off of me. So I'm going to go ahead and let that sit, and we'll be back in a few minutes. And in the meantime, I'm going to dump these jackets out into the trash. If you have a recycler nearby, you could take these to them and they might pay you for the copper that's in here. Okay, so it's not necessarily trash. You could make a few dollars. Okay, I just added my last batch in. Now it's time to put my scoop in, my strainer, and let it warm up a little bit. I've already went in the house and I got a bucket of water for the ground down here. And I'm gonna get my ingot, for my ingots ready, my mold. I'm gonna get it ready. I'm not gonna pour them just yet because I still have a little bit of cleaning to do, and I wanna flux this mix and get rid of all the dirt as much as I can anyway, and get all the dross out. But for now, let me start to remove these jackets. You notice that I start to wiggle it while it's still underneath the molten lead. That's so it stays at temperature. And I'm only removing a few at a time, not too many. Like I said earlier, if I get too many in there, it might be too heavy and it might be a little difficult to wiggle. Like in that batch, I feel something kind of heavy. It might be a Barnes bullet in there. Yep, there's one there too. There's a little, looks like a copper bullet. Didn't melt. Because that melts at a higher temperature. I think it's at least, because this stuff melts, around 650, maybe a little hotter. And I don't know about copper, but it's obvious that it burns, melts at a hotter temperature. Now all this dirt and all these impurities, we're gonna remove that here in a minute. Now there's a perfect example of a case that we cut before we melted down. You can see how good the lead came out of it. So I want to just give this a little skim, Make sure we're getting rid of all the jackets. And we did. We got rid of all the jackets. Now notice how clean this is. That's because I let it get up to temperature. Now I have this small dirty bowl, and that's where I'm going to put all this dross, all this dirt and everything else, all these impurities. But before I do that, I need to get my spoon down in there and warm it up. That way the lead will release from my spoon. So I'm going to go ahead and start scooping that stuff out. And all it is dirt. Right now there might be grass or dead bugs or whatever it is. This is a very dirty batch because I got it from the range. But the good thing is we can salvage it and it'll be good. Remember, we had 25 pounds that we started with. I'll weigh this when we get ingots, and we'll see how much lead we have. I'm very curious how much we're going to salvage. If I was to guess, I would guess that we're going to salvage about 20 pounds. But I don't know. 15, 20, I don't know. We'll see. Okay, we dump this. That was one full muffin tin full. That's a lot of dirt to be in your lead. I want to say too that the better job that you do right now of cleaning this lead and getting rid of all the dross, the less work you'll have to do when it comes time to cast your bullets. So you don't want to be too conservative here. You want to get as much of this junk out as you can. You'll be happy you did when you start casting. You also want to be careful, especially if you have your pan as full as mine is tonight. This is a big batch of lead and it's very heavy, and you want to be careful. You don't want to accidentally spill any or anything like that. This stuff spills pretty easy. It's heavy. So I'm just skimming it around and I'm bringing it all to one place for now. See, I'm making me a little pile of it right there. And again, this is just all the impurities that was in the lead. I'm just going to remove that. You want to scrape the sides of the pan with your spoon. Also scrape the bottom of the pan with your spoon, because this will loosen up anything that's in there. Again, I can't stress it enough. Don't let water drop down in here. Like maybe you're sweating because you're standing over the heat. If you have a drop of sweat come off your nose or something and land in this molten lead, we're going to have big problems. It's going to be pretty explosive, because that water, again, what happens is it turns into steam almost instantly, and it has nowhere to go because the lead is heavier, and the result is explosion, because that steam has to release to something. So you got to be careful getting water in your molten lead here. Very dangerous. I've done it before and it's not fun. So I'm just getting all this dross together. Comes out very easily. And again, you want to make sure you do a good thorough job. You want to scrape everywhere inside. Again, be careful though that you're not going to be splashing. So turn your spoon, scrape all the surfaces, but don't do it too fast where you might splash. This is a liquid right now, but it's a 650-degree liquid, maybe even hotter. So be real careful. The last thing you want is lead in your face or on your arms or anything. Make sure you're wearing pants too. Don't be wearing shorts and stuff. No, don't be out here in flip-flops. Wear good shoes or boots or something so that if you get any kind of water in there or something, you get a little pop, that you got some protective clothing on. When you start getting to the point where you've mixed as much as you can and there's no more dross coming up, which we're almost to that point, I'll do one more cleaning here, and then I'll show you a little trick that I use to help bring up more dross, to help clean it. So let's get this section of dross out, and then I'll show you a little trick I learned. Okay, we've got a lot of dross out of there. Now I'm going to show you a little trick. I go down to Walmart and I buy these little candles. There's a box of 25 of them. I think it's like $1.50. I cut them into 4 pieces. This is what I use for flux to bring up more dross. When you drop it in here, don't let it splash, and be prepared for it to catch fire. It's going to burst into flame, and it's going to be a pretty high flame. There we go. If you were going to cast bullets, right now would be a good time to hold your mold over here so that you could get some of that black soot on the mold. That would help you release your bullets. I'm using my spoon to stir the wax into the lead while it's burning. Okay, what happens is that wax attracts impurities that are in the lead. They basically stick to the wax and then they burn, and it creates more dross. You can do this a couple times, and you can see already I have some dross right here. I'm going to wait, let it cool a little bit, and then I'm going to fish this dross out. So that's a little trick that I use to bring up a little bit more dross, to get this lead a little bit cleaner. Pretty good trick, works well. But always be prepared for that flame, because different types of candles flame differently. I've had candles that hardly flame at all, and I've had some that may have had a little more oil base in them that flame quite a bit. So always be prepared, the first time you use a specific candle, because you don't know what you're going to get into. Here we go, I'm going to put another one in. Again, step back, there it goes, and as soon as it goes into flames, you want to start mixing. You're mixing the wax in the lead. You're trying to get that thing to grab any impurities that are in there. You notice I have gloves on. Now these are not real heat these gloves aren't designed really to be dealing with a bunch of heat. They're just to protect my hands a little bit. They do cut down on it quite a bit, but don't think you're going to come over here and pick this pan up with these little thin gloves on. They'll burn the hell out of yourself. So again, I'm scraping the bottom, I'm scraping the sides. all around the pot. Trying to get that wax to soak up as much dross as I can. Keep my spoon in there to keep the temperature up on it, keep it hot. Wait for the stuff to settle. And then again, I'm going to fish all my dross together. This will be about the last cleaning that I'm going to do on this lead. From here, I'm going to take a little break. I'm going to let it heat a little more. And then I'm going to get my ingot mold out. And I'm going to pour my first batch of ingots. The ingot mold that I'm using is the ingot mold that I made all by myself. Kind of a custom ingot mold. You could probably refer to that video. Check it out, see how I made it. Works really good. So there we go, we have good clean lead. We're ready to pour ingots now. Okay, I have my 4-cavity ingot mold that I made. First thing I want to do is I want to set it on top of my pan and let it heat up a little bit. Now I need to get these other gloves ready because it's going to get hot. I'm going to give that a couple minutes to heat up. Then I'll be back and we'll pour some ingots. I just want it to be warm when it takes that lead. Okay, now we're getting ready to pour some ingots. I have my ladle. Make sure that you're not putting a cold ladle into this hot lead. So I usually like to set it over the lead for a few minutes to warm up. If you put a cold ladle in hot lead, that's not going to be very good. My ingot mold is already warmed up, so I'm going to take this lead in this ladle, come over here and start pouring some ingots. You want to pour it fairly quickly so that you get a nice uniform ingot. Come back and warm this up. Now I see a little bit of dross floating around, so I'm just going to remove that. And let's pour another one. If you get this stuff in between them, I like to just knock it loose if I can. Hopefully before the lead hardens. Looks like I'm about to lose my ladle there. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. It's not that big of a deal if you can't. Just set it down in there and I'll pour right on top of it. A lot of people use a cast iron ladle. It's thicker and it retains the heat a little better. I have one of those on order. It's just not here yet, so I'm using this until I get that one. This is a lot better option than to try to lift the pan and pour them. I tried that before and it's not a very good idea, trust me. Get a ladle. You could pick up a ladle like this at Walmart for like $3 probably. If you want to give your ladle a break, you know, if it's starting to get too hot, go ahead and take it out, but just make sure that it's somewhat close to the heat source. You don't want it to get cold. You know, you can just kind of set it there like if the handle's getting hot or something while you're waiting for these to finish. Okay, I've had them sitting here for a few minutes. The reason this is high on here is so that when I flip them over they don't hit flush. Hopefully they'll come out. If I try to take them out too soon while they're still soft in the middle, they might break in half, so hopefully I'll let them sit long enough. Looks like I got them coming loose. There's 3 anyway. This last one, I'll just get my spoon over here. There we go. I have 4 nice ingots. Now I have a bucket of water on the floor. I'm going to take them very quickly and drop them down in there. Let them cool. Don't handle them too long because these gloves are thin. They will get hot. Okay, my mold's ready. I'm going to go ahead and pour some more. Again, warm this spatula up, or excuse me, this ladle up. You don't want it too cold. So let it get in there for a few minutes. Hit the flame a little bit. And that should be plenty right there. Try not to get this stuff all splashing everywhere. If I had a cast iron ladle, I could probably pour 2 at a time because it would stay hot enough. Let's see what happens here. I didn't have enough. Get a little more. And again, we'll wait 5 minutes or something, let them cool. Okay, I just put a little more wax in there. I'm cleaning out the dross again, and then I'll pour another ingot mold. I sure like this little ingot mold that I made. It works really good. It's kind of neat when you make stuff like that, you know, yourself, because then you have a little bit of, I don't know, I guess you feel good about yourself. You know, you feel like you've done something nice. You know, it's kind of neat when you know that you're using tools that you made. Maybe I'm silly, but I think it's kind of neat. Let's get a little lead. Start pouring again. Like there's a little bit of dross in there again. We're starting to get down to the bottom of it. We're starting to find a little more impurity, and it's good to remove it now. Like I said, it'll save us that step later. It's not going to save us that step altogether. It's just going to make it where we don't have to do as much. Again, make sure you keep this close to the heat source. And while those are drying, we'll throw some more wax in there and let it do its thing. Okay, I'm waiting on my ingots to dry. So I thought I would check for a little bit of dross. This is getting pretty low, my lead level, so I can stir this a little more vigorously now without the fear of lead coming out of the pan. So I'll stir it a little more vigorously. Hopefully we'll stir up a bunch of dross, because when you get down low on your levels, you're kind of getting down to the nitty-gritty, and sometimes you'll find a lot of dirt and stuff attaching itself to the wax. So hopefully this fluxing will work well. We'll be able to get rid of these impurities. So let's check it out and see what we come up with here. Yeah, looks like I got a lot of dross. Not a lot, but you know. You know, another thing I want to mention is a lot of you probably get into bullet casting because you really like to shoot. But what I've found is I like bullet casting almost as much as the shooting. It's a very, very funny experience. It looks like these are, let me see, I'm not sure what I'm pointing at, but it looks like these ingots are ready to go, so I'm going to flip them over. Looks like we got 3 of them out. Move them aside and just kind of pry this last one out. It's got a little ticklish spot on my mold here. When I welded it, there's one little tiny little area that it likes to stick to, but it's not that big of a deal. So there's 4 more, and my ingot mold will be ready to go again. Okay, let's get ready to pour 4 more. Hopefully I have enough lead. Might almost be to the point where I have to lift the pan up. We'll see about that here in a second. I'm hoping not, because I don't like doing that too much. Hoping that I can get a hold of it with my ladle. And I notice when you get down to the nitty gritty here, you'll find a little more dross. So I'm just trying not to scoop too much dross. I think we're done with the ladle for now. So I might have enough lead for maybe 1 or 2 pours. So we'll see. I'm going to go ahead and let all my tools cool down. Put this over, and my next pour will probably be just like I said. It'll probably be a pour. Yeah, because I'm getting pretty thin on lead here. I might be lucky to get maybe 1 or 2 more ingots. If I'm lucky. I'm noticing there's a lot of dross in here, so I'm going to get this dross out, wait for these to cool, and then I'll talk to you here shortly. Okay, we're on the last little bit here. I'm going to go ahead and check and see if there's any dross. Remove what I can, and hopefully we'll get 1 little pour out of here. Try to make these as pure as possible. These gloves are not enough to be handling this pan. So I'm going to grab my welding gloves, and I'm basically going to just use them as mittens to protect me. I'm going to have to pour this fairly quickly. that I get an ingot out, which I did. Stove goes off, let that cool, and that'll be our last ingot. Okay, here goes the last ingot. Get that little one out. There we go. Put them in water and let them cool. Now I'm going to let them dry here in a minute. Well, not necessarily dry, but I'm going to let them cool, and then we'll go see how much lead we got, how much it weighs. Okay, so right in front of me we have 17 ingots plus one tiny one. I'm not even going to count that little one. We have 17 ingots. Let me set this camera down. I'll turn the scale on, and we'll see how much weight we have left over in lead. Now remember, we started with 25 pounds. Let's see what we got here. 20 pounds of lead. That's not bad for one day's work. Took me a few hours. You know, when I was out at the range, I probably spent maybe an hour or two picking up lead. Came home, cleaned it, spent about an hour doing that, and then about maybe another hour pouring ingots and melting. So about 3 hours worth of work, and here we sit, 20 pounds of lead. That'll make a lot of bullets. I hope this video was helpful for you. I hope you got some good information off of it. Feel free to subscribe to my channel. Feel free to leave comments. And I hope you enjoy this video. Thanks again for watching, guys. Have a good day. Bye-bye.